Passover and Easter are loaded holidays for us, aren't they? How many people were a little bit uncomfortable singing Jesus Christ is risen today? I guessed that would be the case. They're loaded for me too. Even in childhood, I loved the celebration of these holidays, but was so aware that the theology behind them directly conflicted with who I was. Dying for my sins and rising for my salvation only if I believed in that act? Thanks, but no thanks. I am half Jewish, after all, and my Jewish heritage says that faith is more than just belief. Real faith is about how we live. And by the same token, I adore Passover Seders. But killing innocent, non-Jewish children to send a message, how can that be the act of a loving God? How could that be a God I'd want to serve? I can't believe that liberation and love is only for a chosen few. That's one among many reasons why I'm Unitarian Universalist. But I think what makes these holidays the most difficult for us to relate to is the role that God plays. They are highly theistic holidays. And regardless of what individuals believe within our congregation, we tend to organize around human theologies, not divine ones. It can feel like there's little room for human agency in stories that highlight divine miracles. One of the reasons why I chose the Gospel of Mark's account of Easter is that it really underscores the human experience of resurrection. It isn't glorious and praised. There's no mention of salvation. And it isn't tied up in a neat bow. It ends on a cliffhanger. We don't know what happens next. I guess when I was writing my sermon, I could sort of relate to that. But Mary, and Salome say nothing about the resurrection. We only know that they were terrified. And who can blame them? If I went to the grave of a loved one and found it empty, I don't think hallelujah would be my first instinct. Just saying. But later Christians were so dissatisfied with that ending that they made additions to have them spread the good news. And for me, that cheapens what it has to tell us about the raw human experience of new life after loss. Because yes, it can be exciting, but it's also terrifying. Because Easter is not just a story about resurrection. It's also a story about death, about change, about how we reconceive, moving from loss to a reinvestment in something with incredible potential. And fear is such a natural part of that journey. The part of the story that I hunger for is not how they got from saying nothing to spreading the gospel, but how they moved from fear and grief into an investment in something entirely new. Because that is the piece of resurrection that is both miraculous and entirely human. And I think we find wisdom from the rabbis who wrote the Talmud's account of parting the Red Sea, because they sought the human story too. In their account, when Moses first tries to part the Red Sea, nothing happens. The people are terrified, and in the midst of that terror, Nahshon walks right into the water in an incredible act of faith. And it was Nahshon's courage his willingness to step into a terrifying unknown that actually parts the sea and delivers them to freedom. But Nashon's act of courage was not without fear or even grief from what they left behind, because that's not how psychology works. When people decide to take action in times of transition, it's not because we aren't afraid. It's because we're finally ready to name our fears and own them. Because reinvesting in new life, in the potential for freedom, means we risk losing something again. And that's why we can be so reluctant to take that step and actually jump in. Because sometimes it feels safer not to take the risk. Believe me, I know how hard transition can be. Almost 2 years ago, I began the most incredible journey of my life. I became a mother. And the truth is that joy didn't come to me overnight. My pregnancy hadn't been easy. And even though Tally and I came out safe and sound, I couldn't quite figure out how to release the fear of what I'd experienced and the great unknown of parenting. But then I realized something. I was grieving. I was grieving an independence that I would never have again. I was grieving that my life and my ministry were no longer only mine. Because I had an image of ministry that called for me to throw my whole self in. But my ministry didn't just belong to me. It belonged to Tally and Mick too. And once I named that and grieved that, I was able to find so much more joy in both motherhood and ministry. I could invest myself in the wonders of both, in the new life that they bring to each other. And I learned that boundaries actually strengthen my ministry. And suddenly, I wasn't as afraid to jump in. Because ministry being a group effort means that we're never alone for it. Mary, Salome, and Nashon show us that we can jump in while being afraid. Because courage is allowing ourselves to grieve and to say yes to life anyway. I can name that this congregation had incredible ministries with Lucas and with Eric. And at the same time, believe there is space for us to create something new together. I believe we can grieve what is no longer here, while also being excited about the potential for our shared ministry. I don't want us to think that fear is to be shunned, because it's not. It's an expression of love, of connection we worry could be lost. And the way that the women and Nashon moved from fear into joy was not to run from their fears, but to embrace them. So let's lean into our fears together. Because that's what it means to jump into ministry. I want to honor our history. Let's know it, love it, and grieve the pieces that it's time to release. Because only then can we jump in and rise together. Only then will our new life be something to celebrate. Only then will our ministry together be something foundationally new, something that we create. In the Gospels, when Jesus is resurrected, he was not resurrected exactly as he had been. He was something else, eternal and connected. And when I came back to ministry after Tally was born, my ministry came back transformed. it came back stronger. Because suddenly I had a perspective that was entirely new. My hopes for community are now shared hopes. They are Tally's hopes. But now they're also your hopes. And that is my vision for us. That when we rise together, it isn't a recreation of our past. It is us recreating ourselves to be something that is so deeply connected to our mission and our vision that it transcends us as individuals. It is a ministry that is always evolving, always growing, always bringing new life. We don't need to believe in God or even miracles to believe in each other. And I do believe in us. That we are risen. That we will jump in. But unlike Nashon, we aren't one person in an act of courage. We are a community of love that will brave the waters together. It's okay to fear the waters of change because we are together for it. The connections that I've witnessed here are stronger than any waters that could submerge us. Don't let anyone tell you that we can't be both fearful and excited. Excitement isn't the absence of fear. It's a rechanneling of it. It's our decision to jump in. So today, let us be risen. Let us jump in. Let us share this new life. Blessed be, and amen.
If the ushers will come forward for the offertory. Just as a